Welcome everyone coming in and joining us for our virtual college fair session with Cristo Rey Network. And this session is Ask an Admissions Rep Anything. So welcome to everybody joining us. Just a few housekeeping reminders as we're getting started today that your cameras and your microphones are off, so our panelists cannot see or hear you. But if you want to ask any questions, feel free to use the Q&A button on your screen on Zoom to ask any questions you may have for our admissions representatives. If you would like to review this recording afterwards, it will be online if you want to go back and refer to anything that was talked about today. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Sonia from the Cristo Rey Network.
Hi, everyone. Excited to have a couple of incredible institutions represented this afternoon to answer any questions you have about the admissions process. As you have questions, feel free to drop them in. I am going to kick us off to get us going. And so, yeah, if I can have each rep introduce themselves. John, we'll start with you and share your name, your institution, and what do you enjoy about your role. Want to humanize you guys for our listeners, that their applications don't just go into a big system and then something spits out. There are humans behind it, so we'd love for them to get to know you guys a little bit.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Sonia. I'm happy to be with you and with the students and families within the network this afternoon. I'm John Tomaso. I'm one of the associate directors of admission for Fairfield University. We're located on the southern coast of Connecticut, just a gorgeous area right along the Fairfield Beach. We're about an hour and 10 minutes or so north of New York City, Jesuit school of about 5,000 undergraduate students. Why do I enjoy this work? I've been doing this work for a long time. This is my 37th year in college admission. And I guess the main reason I do this work is because I find it rewarding. You know, we work with you students at such an important part in your lives, right? Such an important time in your lives when you're leaving high school and you have this option to go on to college, right? And there are over 3,000 schools to choose from. There's a lot to think about as you go through the process, but I find it to be rewarding to work with students as they kind of navigate their way through the process. I love to see students I've worked with enroll and learn and mature on our college campuses and go on and become really successful. And we feel as though we've had a hand in that success. And so that in itself has been really rewarding for me.
Thanks, John. Diana?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diana Hernandez. My pronouns are she, hers, ella. I serve as the Director of Admissions at California Lutheran University. We are located in Southern California, right between Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, about 25 minutes from the coast. We have just over 2,500 undergraduate students with an average class size of 14. Something to answer your question, what do I enjoy about my job or what kind of keeps me going? I have to share a little bit about myself. I'm a proud Cal Lutheran alum, so I graduated with my bachelor's degree in psychology with a family and with a child and family development emphasis. And so I'm really biased about Cal Lutheran, but it's just such an awesome place to be. I'm a first-gen student from a low-income household, daughter of immigrants. And so something that I absolutely love about my job is really similar to what my colleague John mentioned, is really being able to work with students. I did not think at one point, I did not think college was in the books for me. I did not think a private as an institution was in the books for me. And so one of my favorite things is having students really see like, oh no, I could really go to out of state. I could go in state. I could go to a big school. I could go to a small school. And for them to really realize like this awesome potential and these awesome opportunities that are out there and help break down some of these barriers that are there. That maybe they're like, how do I get through this? I'm like, you don't need to worry about that because that's why we're here. And that's why you have high school counselors. Like we're here to help break down these barriers. And that's one of my absolute favorite things to do.
I love it. No one is in this process alone, for sure. Especially our Cristo Rey students. There's such a huge community, both from their high school side and the colleges. Thank you both. So we already have our first question, and to remind the participants, if you do have a question, feel free to drop it in the Q&A. This session is really run by you. So excited that you have all joined us. So I would love to ask, because both of you do have a religious backing to your institution. How does a college's religious sponsor impact their student experience, the curriculum, what the campus programming is like? And does it matter if a student belongs to that faith?
Yeah, I can take the first stab. It really depends on the college. And unfortunately, that's going to be, I feel like, a lot of our answers, because it really just depends. And so when I'm talking about California Lutheran University, there is no hiding we have that religious affiliation with that institution. It's something that we're really proud of our school. We have 35 different faiths represented on our campus. And so what I tell students is, there's a spectrum from like very religious to not very religious, and every school can fall anywhere on that spectrum. It really just depends. For example, is there a faith statement, meaning that students, faculty, and staff are of that same faith? Is there a chapel requirement? What happens if you don't go to chapel? How many religion courses that you have to take? And every single one of them is different. And so for some institutions, it is going to matter if you're not of that same faith. For some of them, they require weekly attendance, daily attendance to chapel or a mass. And so my biggest tip is, don't rule out some schools, right? Like, even if they have that religious affiliation, but ask those questions and ask, like, what happens if I don't go to chapel? How many different faiths are on campus? And if it's just that one faith, there's so many amazing schools out there that do have that just one faith, that if that's what you're looking for, like, you will 100% find it. But if that's not what you're looking for, that's completely okay. And know that there are still some religious institutions that don't have that one faith component, where you're still able to express yourself, learn, question, explore all of these different faiths at different institutions. John, I don't know if you have something to add.
Yeah, I think it's some really great advice, Diana. And we all are so different, and I think you have to really look at each institution to kind of figure out their ethos, their culture, and what they're all about. I know I can speak for my school at Fairfield. It's kind of a tradition of the Jesuits, and hopefully you students have learned a bit about the Jesuits within your years within the network. But the idea of the Jesuits have of educating everyone, regardless of what their faith might be, right? And so we have students from many, many faiths at Fairfield. And if you're looking for a place where you can continue to develop your faith, your spirituality, however you define that for yourself as an individual, my school and so many schools have some really, really great opportunities to do that. That said, students with no faiths, with no faith at all, those students are certainly still welcome at my institution. I would think at most institutions. So it kind of really depends where you're looking, but you have to really do your research and kind of reach out, and not just the admission folks, but often we can be a conduit to maybe connect you with current students, maybe people from things like our campus ministry teams, if that's an interest of yours to learn more about resources or events or programming that we do on our campuses. But where I think the point person who can help you connect with all kinds of people on our campus to learn more about faith and how that might impact your experience on the campus.
Yeah, thank you for that. It can be so broad and yet so intentional if that's where students' interests lie. Our next question coming in is, what about first year student support? Diana, you mentioned you were a first gen. I was also a first gen going through this process. And so many of our students, nearly 80% of our students identify as first gen at the Cristo Rey network. And so what kind of support services, academic, socio-emotional, financial, what is there available to support our students in this first year as they transition to college?
Yeah, this is such an important question, and I highly, highly encourage you to ask whatever institutions end up being on your list, like, what support is there if you are a first-gen student. There's unfortunately a couple different things that you're going to have to learn along the way that can be a little bit tricky unless you have some of that support. And so there's lots of resources. A lot of schools have like first gen houses or like first gen housing. So like first gen houses, and that's where they have a lot of the support, but also where everybody in that residence hall is of that same identity, where everybody is first gen. So you're able to really support each other and help each other along the way. There's, for example, if any of you are part or have been part of TRIO or Upward Bound, there's the continuation of that at a lot of different institutions, that federal grant that keeps going That's something Cal Lutheran has, where for us, it's called Student Support Services. Everyone's going to have it a little bit different. The name is going to be a little bit different, but essentially what they're there is to help you with everything and anything you need to succeed. Like that's their motto, from academic tutoring if you're struggling on a class to, hey, dynamics at home are changing a little bit and it's getting a little bit hard. Can I talk to someone about it? Or struggling making friends, but it's also all the good stuff, right? Like you just stayed up till 10 p.m., 11 p.m. studying for a test and you just got it back and you got that A, like let's celebrate that together. So it's, yes, it's for the challenges, but it's also for the really awesome stuff that you have a chance to celebrate too. And so most campuses are going to have something like that. Most campuses are going to have counseling and psychological services. Like I cannot speak enough about getting that additional support because any transition is hard, right? Going from middle school to high school is hard. High school to college is going to be hard. Community college to a four-year institution is going to be hard. And so getting that additional person that maybe can just help you break down what was a really challenging week is going to make a difference. And so wherever you end up, ask about what type of psychological services do you all offer? Is it free? If not, what's the cost? How do I sign up for some of these different resources? But my most important piece of advice is to find that house, find that opportunity where maybe you don't know all the other resources, but that's okay because that house is there to help you connect to these different resources. Institutions don't expect you to know everything, right? Like that's our job. It's our job to share these resources with you. And so if you find that one spot, that one person, it could even still be your admission counselor. I still have students that call me and it's like, Deanna, I don't know where to go. Where can I get this resource? Like that's what we're here for. And so connect because there is so much resources out there and also financial aid, like go to the financial aid office. Some institutions have scholarships for first-year students specifically. And so make sure that you're asking along those ways or asking those questions along the way.
I'll add a bit to that. So I would guess I'm going to make a pitch for private education, private colleges. In all my years of doing this work, I've worked for 3 institutions, all private institutions. And no offense to the public universities out there, but I think we do an exceptionally good job with supporting our students. You always hear the stories, perhaps you've heard the stories, students of being in a classroom, maybe at a large institution where, your first week, the professor says, look to your left, look to your right, the student sitting next to you perhaps will not be here next year. In a sense, they're almost trying to weed students out. Not the case with private education. For the most part, we're there to support students and ensure that they're successful. That's what we want. We want our students to persist, stay with us and graduate and become successful. So at Fairfield, where I work, we have some nice resources for students, first generation students. The first thing comes down to your professor. In a smaller environment like with us, with our average class size being 20 students, your professor is more than a teacher up on a stage with a microphone pinned to her blouse or his shirt. They're there to really mentor you. They serve as your initial academic advisor. They facilitate research that you might want to do a bit later. Even kind of a cool thing they do is they connect you with some of their former students out working in different professions. So you get advice from graduates from our school about what they do in their daily work and how their experiences help prepare them for the work that they do. So your professor is the kind of first line of support, but we have a whole plethora of advisors, and that's both academic advising and counseling as well as personal counseling. We know especially you high school students right now who've been through a lot the last few years with the pandemic, with learning from a laptop sitting on your bed all day long at home, which is a bit different than being in a classroom interacting with your classmates and your teachers, right? So we know that lots of students today have challenges, and we want to ensure that they come to our school and they have a good foundation to be successful. One thing I'll talk about really briefly is this group. We have a cohort of Cristo Rey students with us, part of what we call the company scholar program. We offer a really incredible scholarship for Cristo Rey students, which is full tuition, full room and board, all the expense covered all 4 years. But those students come to us before the fall semester begins. They come to us in the summertime as a cohort meaning a small group working together, and they really learn and hone some important skills. So when school starts day one, they feel better acclimated acclimated. They already know each other. They know their way around, and they're not like a deer looking in the headlights, being on campus, day one. They feel acclimated to the school. So it helps with that transition. And that's what we're all there is to ensure a smooth transition and success at our institutions. So a pitch for the privates out there.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you and there's so many. You mentioned, John, there are, being over like 3,000 colleges. So I'm gonna take us back to the start of this process a little bit. We do have juniors and seniors that were invited to the call. So when thinking about the juniors, like getting started in this process really early, like where should they start? How do they even begin with this whole college admissions process in that junior year?
Diana, I guess I'll start on this one then, if I can. So you all are at some schools with some really dedicated folks at the Cristo Rey Network. So not only the counselors at your schools who are important people, but also folks working in this alumni capacity, meaning that they reach out and connect with and communicate with their former students on these different college campuses, right? Former Cristo Rey students on all these different college campuses. And they could be an important resource for you as well. Being from your school now on a campus, whether it's, in the Midwest, East Coast, West Coast, but to get advice and insight from them is important. I think you want to really be an informed consumer as you go through this process. College fairs would be a great way to start. Hopefully this Thursday evening and this afternoon, Saturday, you're learning from a lot of different colleges from all around the nation, which is a good starting point. We all look great through review books. We all look great when you see our little PowerPoint presentations, but there's no substitute to actually going to a school, not just to visit that school, but to experience that school, which means, meeting professors, talking to students from your hometown, maybe even from your high school that are on that campus, again, to get insight, advice, ask questions of those students. You really want to be a consumer who's informed and make the right decision. In the end, choose the school that in your heart feels like the right place. And I always tell students that no one knows you better than yourselves. Perhaps your parents think they do, maybe they do, perhaps they don't, but trust your instinct as you go through the process. And if you visit different kinds of schools, a bit further from home and also closer to home, small, mid-sized and large. And the more you visit different kinds of schools, the more you kind of figure out what's important for you as an individual as you make this big decision. So again, you want to be informed. This is a great way to start, but make use of the counselors and those alumni counselors working at your high schools. They're great resources, and that's what they're there for. So really reach out to them.
Yeah, all awesome tips. I'll echo everything John mentioned, and I'll add like three things. I think the first thing is university partners. Like I'm gonna make a little plug in there for the university partners. These are institutions that are going to be providing Cristo Rey Networks additional financial aid. So that you're going to get a strong financial aid scholarship from these schools. They are committed to serving this group of students and students in general. And so the awesome thing is that your counselors have done a lot of the hard work for you, and they have that master document where you're able to see what is the 4-year graduation rate, what services do they offer, where are they located, and so you have a really awesome place to start. And so I highly recommend starting there, having those conversations with them, and kind of figuring out the way it works. So that's tip number 1, university partners. Tip number 2 is don't let the school price scare you away from applying to any school as you're kind of formulating your list or actually applying. When I was going through the college process, I remember the first question I would ask was, what do you cost? Like, what is the cost to live on campus, to commute? What am I looking at? And my admission counselor, who's now a really good friend of mine, was like, Diana, this was back when I was a student, like, Diana, don't worry about the cost. And I just remember, as again, a first-gen low-income student, I was like, how can I not worry about the cost? Like, that is my number one factor in where I'm going to go. I know what I can afford. I know what my family can afford. And it's not at that point what I was thinking like a private education. And she told me like financial aid works, and you have high school counselors to help you figure out financial aid offers, and you talk to your admission counselors to figure out, hey, is there any more financial aid that we can tap into? Because I really want to go to X school, how can we get me there? And so for now, as scary as it sounds, my biggest piece of advice is ignore the cost of a college, because there is so much to tap into, especially if they're a partner institution, that by you narrowing it down really early on based on the cost can really take out some really awesome institutions that might be a really good fit. That is not to say we're not going to pay attention to the cost, because we will, but that's going to be much later. Once you get those financial aid offers, we want to make financially smart decisions. We want to make sure you know what everything is going to entail, but that's going to come later. And then my third tip is actually a really practical tip. John mentioned college fairs. Go to the college fairs, have those conversations. Most of us are going to ask for the same information in those information cards: name, email, birth date, school, and graduation year. They're all going to vary a little bit. For the most part, those 5 things are what we're really looking for. And so when you're going to these college fairs, print out like a label, do it at school, do it at home, but print out labels that have that same information and take them with you, so that then you're like, oh, I had a great conversation with Fairfield and Cal Lutheran. Let me make sure they have my most up-to-date information. All you have to do is peel off one of those labels, stick it on their information card, and then we pretty much have the information we need. Again, they might be like, hey, I actually really also need this one thing, but it's quicker to fill out 1 or 2 fields than having to rewrite the same information over and over again. And it can sometimes be hard to read. And so if your number 1 looks like an L, we might put an L instead of a number 1, and now we don't have your correct information. And so typing it out makes it a little bit easier for you and for us to make sure we have your information. Those are my 3 tips, in addition to everything John mentioned.
Thank you for that. Such great tips as students are getting started. But we also have our seniors who are now putting like pen to paper, fingers to keyboards, and getting ready to actually submit, especially with the early action, the early decision, all of those sorts of things. What tips do you have for our seniors that are in the middle of creating their applications now? Like what should they be wary of? How can they best shine?
I guess I'll begin again, Diana, if I may, on this one. So as you students work, seniors work on your applications, I want to say this, as Diana and I and all the rest of these admission folks out here read applications, they kind of all look the same until we read your personal statement, your essay. So that's something that really kind of puts the human element into this whole process as we look at all these students applying to our institutions. So think about that. Think about your personal statement right from the heart about your experiences, maybe a significant event or an important person in your life. Use some of the prompts you might find from the Common App or elsewhere if you're applying through another platform. But put thought, put care into those essays. It's so important. And certainly ask your English teacher, maybe an adult in your life, maybe your guidance counselor, college counselor, to proofread your essay. And it's not a one shot and you're done. You want to tweak it and edit it and really make it the best piece you can submit to colleges. A lot of students I work with submit resumes to us. You don't need to do that, but somewhere along the way, if not on a resume, on your application, you want to convey not only your involvement, whether it's at school, in your community, in your local church or synagogue, but also where you've had positions of leadership. We're looking for students who are leaders, because those are the kind of students who are going to make a mark on our college campus. They're going to bring that much more vitality and life to our campuses. So if you've had some positions of leadership, be sure, don't be modest. The application is one time in your life, as we're all trained and taught to be modest. You want to boast and brag a bit, so to speak, with this application you're working on. But put thought, put care into it. And those are some basic thoughts I have on that.
Yeah, to piggyback on John and the scholarship, the reviewers, I recommend 3 reviewers. So personal statement review and reading can be really subjective, right? Like I can read it and I'll tell you, hey, I really think you should work on this side. Then Sonia's going to read it and she's going to say, hey, work on this other section. And now you're like, which section am I supposed to work on? So write, rewrite. Like this should not take you a week. It should be a lengthier process. Once you think you're done, you're going to ask 3 readers. The first one is someone who knows you really well, a parent, a sibling, a best friend. And you're going to ask them, does this sound like me? We want to make sure that your voice is coming through. Your second reader is someone who doesn't know you that well. And you're going to ask them, what did you learn about me? Because this is our way to actually learn something about you. And so you want to make sure that your voice is coming through, but that we're actually learning something about you. And then your last reader is going to be your proofreader. And they're just going to read for run-on sentences, periods, punctuation marks, capitalization, all that fun stuff. And then that's it. And then you're just going to go ahead and submit it on over. 3 readers. One of the advice that I always give students is to really take advantage of opportunities to connect with us more. And so I'll say, like, for example, I don't know 80% of the applications that are read. Maybe 20% I've met at a high school or at a college fair. Most of them I don't. Out of that 20%, I would say maybe about 5% of them, I've actually done a one-on-one interview. If the school offers the opportunity to do an interview, take them up on it. Because if anything, they're just like getting to hear your story from you a little bit more, where we're able to engage in conversation versus just reading on the personal statement. So if they have an interview opportunity, definitely take it. And then the last thing I'll say is, when you are bragging about yourself, 100%, like, write down everything that you've done. And that includes taking care of siblings, supporting family, grandparents, or working. I know you're all doing the work partnership, right? Like, make sure you write about that. If you're doing additional work outside of it, like, write about that. And so that's what I call, like, the non-traditional extracurriculars, where maybe you weren't captain of your soccer team, but you were instead taking care of a younger sibling. Like, that shows me the exact same characteristics, right? Like, you are time managing, you are being responsible, you are taking care of others, you are showing that leadership. And so know that it's not just those typical things that we see in movies or we're reading about, like, it's everything else. Like, as someone that did all those things, I'm like, wait, we were doing the same thing, just like in a different way. And so make sure that you're not excluding anything. Translating for family members, it is hard to think in 2 languages, and you're using terminology and language that you weren't using at school. Like, I remember we'd go to doctor's appointments and my parents would be like, what did they say? And I'd be like, I actually don't know, because this is a whole nother language right now. And so any sort of service that you're doing like that for your family, know that that is 100% something you should be listing on your applications. And it's going to show us how awesome you are, in just not that non-traditional way, but again, just as awesome.
Thank you for that. We have some parents tuned in and listening to this conversation. Would love to hear, and some of them are some of our first gen students have parents that didn't go through this process before, so they're learning right along with their student. What kind of guidance can you give for families, and how can they support? How can they be helpful? What should their role be in all of this?
Okay, I'll take this one first. We'll alternate. This is such a good question. Be as involved as you possibly can be. I understand sometimes work is a little bit hard, so maybe you can't go to those college fairs. Sometimes you can't attend that visit on that Saturday. Those were my parents, right? But it would be like, my parents knew where I was applying. So ask, like, what's your schools looking like? Like, is there a way for me to get involved? How can I support you? Making appointments with admission counselors, even one-on-ones, I guarantee you, like, 99% of the time, like, we're going to work with your schedules and do everything we can so we can meet with you to really break it down. Because a lot of the time, what I've seen is students talk to me, they hear our presentation and they're like, I want to go to Cal Lutheran. And then the parents are like, okay, you want to go out of state? Or like, wait, you want to go to like a private school? Like, what does that look like? And so you having those conversations with us can help you see why your student is falling in love with the institution. And at the same time, you're going to have questions that maybe they're not thinking about, right? Like safety. You're going to be like, I want to make sure you're going to be safe. I want to make sure you're going to eat. I want to make sure that there's going to be a doctor that's there if you're going to be sick. And so those are questions that you, of course, as parents and people who have cared for them and love them are going to have, that the students are like, I did not even think about me getting sick on a college campus. And you're like, right, that's what I'm here for. And so engage with us, ask us those questions, but know that you're also not alone. We are here to help and support you along in that way and help you learn too, right? Like even to this day, my parents don't understand AP classes. They're like, I don't understand how that could be better than like a regular class if you're getting not an A in that class. And now this is what I do for a living, and we're still having those conversations. And so it's hard, right? And it's a whole different language, but know that as much as we as admission counselors are here to support your students, we're also here to support you in supporting them. And so it could be group conversations where we're all jumping on a Zoom and we're all having that same conversation, or it could be, I've had conversations just one-on-one with parents where the parents are like, let me be real with you, like this is how much I can pay. And sometimes it can be hard to have some of those conversations. So whatever is coming up, just utilize us and keep tapping on us as well.
Great advice. I'll add just a little bit to that, if I may. So I think in the last, maybe, I don't know, 10, 20 years, colleges realize how important parents and guardians are in this process. So often you'll find, as Dinah talked about, students filling out those little inquiry cards at a college fair, we ask for parents' email information as well, because we have a whole different communication flow to parents. And so we want to be able to address questions, issues, concerns which parents may have through this process. A lot of college campuses, I'm happy to see, have added things like parent organizations. So you, a parent of a prospective student, can connect with parents of currently enrolled students on our campuses, and that it could be a really important resource, kind of parent to parent, having conversations via text or email or even via the phone call. So I think I'm happy to see so many colleges realizing the importance of parents and guardians in this process and have communication flow going right to them, kind of unique to what the concerns they may have. So those are just a couple things, but in the end, I would say give your students some space as they go through the process. They're not alone. You're with them to support them. But ideally, in the end, in a perfect world, they'll be choosing an institution where both they're excited about it as you are. So I think having some candid conversations between student and parent, so you're on the same page as you go through this process, is really, really key. So just a couple things to think about.
Yeah. I can just add like one more quick thing on that is like, this is their time to do something totally different. And so I know I'm not a parent, but I can only imagine how hard it is, but like, don't limit them, right? So if they want to go to a school out of the country, if they want to go to college internationally and they've done their homework, like it can be a little bit scary, but like take a breath and be like, there's a saying in Spanish that my mom always tells me is like, lo que yo no te doy, no te quito. Like what I can't give you, I can't take away type of thing. And so let us have them for a little bit. Like we promise as a college is like, we're going to take care of them. Let us have them, let them find their independence, and you're going to see like, it's so crazy to see like first year college students versus even second year college students, like they mature and grow up and start to find their own voice. And their own vocation of what it is that they want to do, that wherever it is that they're finding that's where they want to go, like trust them. They're going to be okay. And there's still ways for you to get involved. Call, we always tell students, like, call your parents. Like all the students that work at the admission office ask them, when's the last time you called your parents? They're like, actually, I was like, right, take 5 seconds, just let your parents know you're okay. Like just call them. And so, but know that this is the time for them to really, really go out. And there's those resources that we've all been talking about of they're going to be okay.
Yeah, thank you both. As the parent of a first year college student, yeah, it's really hard. But man, he is like thriving and learning for himself that he is even more capable than he thought he would be. He's really taking it like a fish to water. As we dropped him off 6 hours away, but it's incredible what he's able to uncover about himself as he's out there on his own, making his friends, his community. So yeah, at the end of the day, there's no like wrong decision. And, you know, he knows I'm here to support. And I think that's the most important thing that parents can just do, is make sure that give them a little leeway, but also know there's a safe space that will support them no matter what. So anyway, thank you both for speaking to our families and how they can help. You know, and a big issue, a big concern often for families is the cost of college. And so, you know, as families are applying for financial aid and going through this process and learning more specifically what that will be, what are some tips or some guidance as they are measuring those costs against what their family can afford, and if things have changed, what are some steps they can take to alert the college to any like financial changes?
So, you know, I think, Sonia, you were referring to an extra step in the financial aid process, which is called special conditions. So, you know, we know that the FAFSA, certainly families, is not a perfect form out there, right? And so there's often more going on than you can really convey on a form like a FAFSA, an FAFSA. So let's say there's been loss of employment in the household and the income is not what it was 2 years ago, which is the information you're providing on the FAFSA, the financial information from 2 years prior. So all of us, all institutions have a mechanism where you can convey some of these new circumstances within your household, which is impacting your financial situation. And certainly we want to really drill down and really look at where you're at right now, not 2 years ago, but the financial situation right now. So if there are changes, sometimes, you know, God forbid, families have, you know, medical issues not covered by insurance. Those are things which impact the money coming in, the money going out in your household, and we want to know that so we can really offer and package a good, affordable aid offer for your students. So we want to make it affordable. I know Diana talked about this earlier, I believe, but I want to make a pitch. You know, I give a lot of credit. Back when he was our president, President Barack Obama initiated something years back when he was president, these net price calculators, right? So every institution in the country was mandated to add that feature to our website. So meaning on a rainy afternoon like it is here in Chicago right now, students, you could sit home on the kitchen table with your iPad and go to any college in the country, plug in your academic information, a bit about your family's financial information. Within 5 minutes or so, you'll get a sense of what the cost might be at that school. So, you know, I know Diana talked a lot about net cost, not the full price, and there's a big difference between the two. And keep that in mind as you navigate your way through that process.
Yeah. Special circumstances, super important. The connection, let me take that back. The communication between you, the family, not just the student, but the family and your admission counselor is going to be key. Because when something like that happens, we can send you the form, we can let you know who to talk to in financial aid. But sometimes even then, it's like, yeah, that's still not it. Like, that's still not enough. Most colleges are going to have a process where it's like, okay, let me send this to the committee, or like, let's see if there's any additional financial aid we're able to offer. But we don't know that unless this family, the student, communicates that over to us. And so talking to your counselors is going to be like the biggest piece of advice I can give, even if it's application help. Like, the Common App is stuck, I don't know what to do. Great, send them to us. We can see what we can do. Financial aid, which is what we're talking about, is going to be key. Scholarships. And this is outside scholarships. I tell students, the way scholarships for me in my mind work is it's a delayed job. So you're going to work on it every single, maybe 30 minutes a day. Maybe it's every weekend you're going to dedicate 2 to 3 hours where you're just cranking out scholarships. And maybe you're not getting paid right then and there, but at the end, when you get all those scholarships, that's you getting paid for the work that you did. There's so many scholarships out there, but unless you apply for them, you can't get them. And so I know you're all busy, especially going into your senior year. If you are a senior, I get it. Like, I I remember my younger sister was a senior in high school not too long ago. Like, I saw it and I remember thinking, she's busier than even I was. And I'm guessing you're just getting busier. But setting aside that time is definitely going to make an impact. And even if it's $1,000 scholarship, like, go for it. Because if you get 5 $1,000 scholarships, that's $5,000 that you don't have to worry about. So there's no scholarship that's too small. Spend some time. A lot of colleges are already going to have a list for you, like I know we do, of outside scholarships that we have vetted, that we know are legitimate, that are going to ask you only the information that they need, and you can start to work on those. The reason I say legitimate is because there are some places, institutions, organizations out there that are offering scholarships that are not really scholarships, right? Like, if you have to pay to apply for a scholarship, chances are that's not a legitimate one. We want to make sure we're vetting those. And so also be really careful about where you're providing very sensitive information, especially things like social security numbers or anything along those lines. And so you want to make sure you're applying to really like legit places that you know are going to be able to offer you that financial aid. And so can communicate with your admission counselors, apply for outside scholarships and financial aid, because those are going to make a huge impact. And then the last thing I'll say is once it's all out, really weighing. So like, okay, for example, school A, maybe their out of pocket is going to be a little bit more than school B. But why would I want to go to school A? Maybe they guarantee my graduation in 4 years, but school B, it's going to take me like 6 years. So maybe it actually is a little bit less expensive to go to school A than go to school B. Or, you know what, school A has resources for first-gen students while school B doesn't. So maybe, yes, it's going to cost a little bit, but having those additional resources are really going to make an impact. Or maybe it's like, whatever are the things that you're really considering, that sometimes it's like, okay, maybe it is going to be a couple $100 more a month, but I can also work on campus. So maybe that's where those extra $100 are going to be able to come from to make school A be the school that I want to go to. And so once it's all said and done and you have those final financial aid offers, it is so much more than just that final number. It's the resources that you're going to have. It's the locations. It's the internships that they're going to offer you. Like, are you going to a place where maybe they don't have those networks already there? Maybe they're trying to build them, but maybe there's this other school that has, you want to be a criminal profiler, so they have this internship with the FBI. Like, maybe that's going to be what's going to be that difference that's going to make it worth it. You're muted, Sonia.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I had a few sirens passing by. But anyway, yeah, no, thank you for that. We have just a couple of minutes left, so would love to just close out. What is one piece of advice to our families, to our students, to keep their sanity in the middle of all this process? Any tips or guidance you have in 60 seconds or less for our students and families going through this right now?
Well, I would say, go through things in a methodical, organized way. And this might sound kind of hokey to use that old term, but keep a file, students, as you begin to receive, acceptance letters, aid offers, scholarship offers, keep them all kind of organized. And then in the end, when you've visited all the schools, you have aid offers, where you've been admitted, then you can sit down with family and kind of weigh all the options. But if you go through things in a methodical, organized way, in the end, you'll make the right decision. And then lastly, I'll say this: don't let us as colleges, twist your arms. It's a huge decision you'll be making. Make the right one. Take the time you need to make the right decision for you and your family. Most of us will give you until May 1st to make that decision, so you have time. And again, if you go through things in an organized, methodical way, you'll make the right decision.
What John said, this is supposed to also be fun. Yes, it's going to be a little bit stressful. Yes, it's going to be a lot of work, but it's also supposed to be fun. Like, you're picking where you're going to be. And so don't lose track of that, right? Like, if it's feeling like too much, maybe take a pause, take a quick break, visit the college campuses as much as you can. Those out-of-state schools, like I know it can be challenging. A lot of them might have fly-in programs where they'll actually fly you out to visit that college campus. So unfortunately, maybe parents aren't able to join, but at least the student is able to do something like that. But trying to remember and ground yourself, like, this is supposed to be fun. And this is supposed to be something exciting that I can look forward to. So keeping yourself organized, talking to counselors is all going to help. I'll just also say I'll put down my contact information in the chat. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to help along the way.
Thank you for that. Yeah, really appreciate your time. Thank you both for joining on this Saturday afternoon, and to our facilitator.
All right, thank you everyone so much. That was such a great session for everybody who attended, and also those who will be viewing the recording later. Everybody had such great insight into the college search process. I just wanted to thank everybody for joining again, our college representatives, our Cristo Rey Network representative, and also all our families and students who attended. This recording will be available online if you would like to go back and refer to it if you missed any questions or answers. And also all of the other recordings from today as well will be online if you missed any sessions. Best of luck to all of our families through their college search process. And I hope everybody has a good rest of their weekend. Bye, everyone.
Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.